Well, I'm here at the Pioneer Village Museum in Swan Hill on the Murray River, just over there, with my mate here, and you can see a riverboat right behind us. So it's sort of the Victorian outback. You know, I've been reading recently that young people in the Gen Z bracket say, they hear the Christian message and they say, yeah, but how does it relate to life? What is it going to benefit me? What can I do with it? Well, that's a fairly practical question. Inside here, I'm going to lead you into a couple of stories that might just give you a couple of clues as to how people can make a difference in their generation with the gifts they have. So come with me and I'll show you. Well, here we are inside the museum, and this is what I promised. In its day, back in the middle 1800s, this was the latest bit of technology designed by a fellow called John Ridley. And John Ridley came to Australia as a miller, just a young bloke with his wife. And South Australia was at a point where it needed to lift its agricultural production. And John Ridley was actually a theologian, a preacher, Methodist, and also a scientist. He loved science and engineering. So he set to work to come up with this. It's called the Ridley stripper. And you look down here, you can see the teeth, and it would go through the corn or the wheat and pull the heads off, beat it in here, gather the grain in the back. The horses pushed it from behind so they didn't trample the crop on the way through. Australia has been gifted with some very forward-thinking entrepreneurs, engineers, you know, state-of-the-art thinkers in their day, who came up with something that lifted the production of wheat right across the state, right across the country, and eventually overseas as well. So they were ahead of the game. But next I'm going to show you another bit of machinery here that sort of eventually replaced it after about 20 or 30 years. There were improvements, of course. And it's the story of a guy called A.V. McKay. Now, in the later part of the 19th century, a fellow called A.V. McKay came up with this bit of gear here. Now, we see it as a, rusty old bit of machinery, but this was absolutely state of the art. This was ahead of the game. And he revolutionised harvesting. It not only stripped, it harvested, and it became a showpiece for Australian industry. In fact, H.V. McKay ended up building a machinery plant at a suburb called Sunshine in Victoria and on the edge of Melbourne. It was called the Sunshine Harvester, you can see it up there. And he built a model village there for his workers. He was following the Garden City movement, and he wanted to provide a good, healthy environment for his workers, give them a fair wage. And that was another part of his story. He had a big fight with the unions and the government to establish what was a fair wage, and eventually he became the man who sort of engineered, if you like, or provoked the basic wage idea in Australia, that there's a bottom level for what you should be paid. So this machine, when you're young people listening to this maybe, wondering, can I do something? Well, here's a guy, he was an inventive genius in his day. Had the biggest agricultural production plant in Australia and eventually the world. It's a remarkable thing that he did, because he didn't just produce machinery and make a lot of money and lift agricultural production in Australia, right across Australia, but he also was an entrepreneur in the sense that he backed another visionary in his day around the turn of the century, a little bit towards the First World War, and afterwards he began to fund what I'm wearing here, the Flying Doctors. He got behind John Flynn and became one of his main supporters, gave a big bequest. And so this machine here was partly responsible for the Flying Doctor service that covered Australia with a mantle of safety. So he was a Presbyterian man with a faith, raised on the Bible, and he saw using his gifts as part of the kingdom of God. He could bless Australia, he could bless the world with not just machinery, but other visionaries like John Flynn to provide medical care for the whole of the country. Now that's amazing, I think. And so young people listening to this, you think, yeah, what could I do, I wonder? Well, I don't know, maybe you've got the gifts that could help make something like this happen in our generation, in our time. Think about that.